Well, we've just finished a roundtable discussion on the big society, and staying on for a chat is Gabriel Chanan here and Colin Miller, whose consultancy Places has just produced a report on the big society, a friendly critique, but also a critique of community development.
Yeah, the critique of community development is actually in another paper, but on the website as well, but they hang together. We've come from, both of us have a long background in community development, and we think it's got masses to contribute, but at the same time, it's not it's not flexible enough and visionary enough at the moment to seize the opportunities, not just at the moment, but for quite some time back probably. So on the one hand, we're saying community development needs to face up to some of its own limitations and develop some of its own stuck ideas in order to grasp the world as it really is at the moment. On the other hand, the big society, it's apparently a very fresh idea. It's not actually, when you look at the details, so fresh. There's a lot in it that links to community development, but the points in it are not really connected up at the moment. Some of them are good, some of them not so good. We don't reject the whole idea. We think this could be a terrific opportunity, but only if it's thought through and if the links between the individual points in it are thought through, which would entail that some of them are seen to be contradictory or not really helping some of the others.
So it's a 22-point bag of stuff at the moment, but
that's all it is at the moment. When people say, oh, what is the big society? The big society is a slogan, a heading for a list of, we found, 22 points in the Tory manifesto, most of which have now transferred over into the coalition. There is no underlying coherence to it that's really explicit yet. That has to be either found or made, and doing that will automatically entail some critique of some of the points that are already there.
But Colin, I think you were finding some positive spirit abroad here that the big society has perhaps helped generate?
Yes, I was thinking about the stuff that really woke me up was Cameron's Hugo Young speech that took place before the election, and what was really interesting was he was outlining his kind of vision about the relationship of the state and communities. And what Gabriel and I have always been interested in, and one of the reasons why we're actually very passionate about community development as well as critical of it, when it needs to be criticised, is about community empowerment and how you go you do the business of helping empower communities. And what was interesting about Cameron's speech was there seemed to be real new thought about what that might mean in terms of the relationship of both central state and local state to local communities. The rub comes in whether that kind of set of ideas, that philosophy, if you like, can then be translated into the big society, because as Gabriel says, the big society is a kind of shopping bag of ideas at the moment and needs much more coherence behind it.
We heard from Steve Moore talking about the Big Society Network, which is the more bottom-up complement to the policy side of things. Do you think there is benefit in more networking, perhaps to join up the different tribes in this field?
I think it's critically important. I think we need to start talking about our own experience. We know stuff that works. We know the potential, because everyone talks about it, the potential of neighbourhood management, for example, as a vehicle for bringing local communities and local services together. We know that there is a great deal more potential in that model to wrestle with some of those key ideas in the big society and begin to add some kind of structural coherence to it. We know that community development, both the national organisations and as a profession, needs to have a very serious dialogue about what the role and the function of community development is now. And there are some extraordinarily difficult questions within that, which need to be teased out.
I'm picking up the conversation again with Colin Miller and Gabriel Chanan after a enforced move from the boardroom where other things had to take place. Colin, can you pick up what we were talking about before?
Yes, I was saying that to really start making this work, it's not just about getting the people who are around the table today. They were terribly important, the people who are already involved in community engagement, community development, empowerment and so on. But actually it's really important to start having that dialogue with the other professions who are delivering public services, who are already doing parallel thinking around community engagement and community empowerment. The police, for example, housing officers, planners and so on. If we're going to have this dialogue about what the big society means, if it means anything, we need to find ways of having that broader conversation with all of those professions who've got an interest and a commitment to finding better ways of engaging with and empowering communities.
And do you think we can do that in a different way? Because I can kind of hear the talk, conservative policy, conservative and liberal for that matter, policy people and big society network people saying, yes, but aren't we just going to get the same old stories, give us the money, can't do it differently, terribly difficult to reorganise and so forth? Do you think there's a spirit for creativity and innovation and so forth that could be released?
I think there is a real opportunity, and it all depends on, for example, let's be real about people are predicting something like 20, maybe 30% cuts in public finances over the next few years. So let's be real about the real tensions and difficulties that's going to cause. But it might be possible for those agencies to do that because they're already beginning to do that within themselves. And there is a kind of hunger to have that conversation outside. So I think the possibility is there, and I think there are examples of really good practice already of, again, if we go back to neighbourhood management, where neighbourhood management has already brought together different professions at a very local level with local people to have that kind of conversation. And it might be possible to do that in a national and regional way as well.
Any final thoughts, Gabriel, on this?
Yeah. One of the examples of the disconnectedness of the collection of things under the big society at the moment is that on the one hand you've got an implication that communities can take over public services and you've got a commitment in fact to supply help to social enterprises in order to bid for contracts to take over public services. And that is expressed as alongside supporting neighbourhood groups, as though it was more or less the same thing or could easily flow into each other. They're actually very different things, even if they do sometimes flow into each other. And what is not grasped, or perhaps not been explored yet, is that the real economy of the big society is in building up the capacity of neighbourhoods, people, local residents and so on, to do things on their own terms, on their own basis, and this has actually very little to do with the way social enterprises run, which is another very important but quite different way of going about it. Trying to take over public services or hand over public services is not going to work. It's not the right approach. If an organisation takes over a public service, that's not the same as the community taking it over. In fact, it's very difficult to work out what would be the whole of a community taking over a public service. It's not. It's usually, inevitably, a small organisation that takes it over. And even if that organisation is well embedded in the community, that organisation then inherits the whole problem of how to relate to the rest of the community. You're just handing a service from a large organisation to a small one. You still have all the same problems. Building up neighbourhood strengths, building up the preventive value of good relationships and morale inside the community is a different thing. I don't think the government's clear about that. I don't think the community development world is very clear about it, even though they've got lots of practical experience of it, because nobody wants, for various reasons, to clarify that, but now it's absolutely essential that it is.
So it's in our face, and this could be a good push to confront the issue.
Yes.